Jayson Tatum is leading the Celtics in all three major box score categories, those being points, rebounds, and assists. He is having his best season yet as an NBA pro. And this was after a year where there was a lot of push for Jayson Tatum MVP, especially from the media, for him to be the MVP. And overall, that kind of flamed out. And in the playoffs especially, Jayson Tatum kind of was looked at as less of the guy, as Jaylen Brown would go on to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP and lastly, Finals MVP. And going into this season, I was of the opinion that Jayson Tatum was going to level up his game even more, and that he was going to play with a chip on his shoulder to prove that he is the best guy, the guy on the Celtics team, the one to go to in all situations, the true MVP, the true first option, the true leader of the Celtics team. Because with Jayson Tatum, his superstar discussions are always kind of awkward because you can tell that he has all the talent, all the tools to be an elite player in this league. But there's always just something taken away from his game, something that takes him away from true elite conversations, from superstar conversations. Whether that's just, his impact on the game, the fact that the Celtics have so many great players, that how much would they truly miss Jayson Tatum? That is conversations that were being had. And part of it is also just NBA Twitter and not being a fan of an individual player and singling him out whenever he has a bad performance. But Jayson Tatum in his own right, he has been inconsistent in the playoffs. He might have 51 game and not do anything the next. He might score largely nothing in the first three quarters of a playoff game and then score like 19 in the fourth. And those are two examples that we have seen. So part of the criticism on Tatum does fall back on him ultimately. But he's kind of pushing back on that criticism now. And I think he has taken it to heart. And not in a way where it affects his confidence necessarily, at least negatively, like you might see with a guy like Ben Simmons, who following getting criticized, getting flamed by the NBA community for his lack of performance in the Sixers playoff exits, Ben Simmons would go on to continue to decline and not be the player that he once was. But Jayson Tatum, he has taken that and put a chip on his shoulder to prove himself. And winning one championship isn't enough, especially when he's not the Finals MVP. He wants to go out there and prove himself and prove that he is the guy on the Celtics team. And obviously, the three major box score categories are not the full game. And you can impact the game in a lot of other facets on the defensive end, especially the defense. That's something that is so eye test oriented. And speaking of the eye test, right, that is something that is so important in terms of how a player can really be perceived by people who are actually watching the games. Because you can put up good numbers, but if it doesn't really look like you're out there putting in the effort and doing all that you can to be an impactful player and win for your team, those stats look a little bit more empty. But Jayson Tatum this season, not only does he have the tools and the talent that we've seen in years past to score for himself and just do all the things, he is also kind of committed a little bit to doing the little things. Because Jayson Tatum, as talented as he is, and as great a defensive player, for example, as he can be, when you're the first option on that Celtics team that lives and dies by the three, kind of has a fast-paced offense for that matter, you can kind of work off of your defensive workload and just hone in on the offensive end. We see it all the time with first options like Luka Doncic, for example, that they might take a step back on defense just because they're so crucial to that offense. But Jayson Tatum, among top players in the league, he is one of the more talented two-way players. In that, while he's not the best defender on the Celtics team, he can still hold his own, absolutely. And maybe Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Jrue Holiday, those are the go-to guys on the defensive end, the main point of attack guys. But that's okay because those three guys are great to elite defenders in their own right, especially Derek White and Jrue Holiday. Those are two elite perimeter defenders. So as a result, Jayson Tatum, for a star, he doesn't need to hone in as much on the defensive end, but he still does. Among top players that are offensive oriented, he is still one of the better defenders out of that group. And he doesn't even need to be, because he's got so many talented defenders on that roster, but he still commits to being a solid defender. And I think that just takes his game to another level in terms of how he impacts it. Because even if he's having a bad offensive game, he can still be a net positive NBA player for what he does to you on the defensive end and all the little things that we don't really see from stars too often. They can get complacent, they can get lazy, and we see some of that from Tatum at times. But this season, it feels like he's really had a chip on his shoulder and committed to being the best guy possible for the Celtics so that he can definitively be the guy on that Boston Celtics team and be the MVP on that team, the guy to look to when they need him most, whether it's on the defensive end or the offensive end. Jayson Tatum has a chip on his shoulder, and it's really working out for the Celtics so far this season. The Eastern Conference in itself doesn't look too strong, but the Celtics are a juggernaut of it along with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that is due in large part due to Jayson Tatum's play, impacting the game in every facet. When there would be excuses realistically if he didn't play too good a defense, there would be criticism for sure, especially a guy like Jayson Tatum. He can face a lot of criticism. At times it's deserved, at times it's not. But overall, I think the media would be able to undermine if he wasn't being a good defender at least and not really doing the little things, just because he is required to carry that offensive load. But Jayson Tatum has really had a chip on his shoulder and committed himself to being a winning basketball player, an impactful player in all facets of the game for the Celtics team, and it is doing wonders, and Jayson Tatum is having the best season of his NBA career. And that's coming after winning a championship, after being top 5 in MVP discussions. He has become an even better player, a more impactful player, and it's all due to that chip on his shoulder. He is responding to the criticism and facing with confidence and rounding out his game.